So imagine you are the CEO of a small independent startup.
Okay, I'm with you.
You've got a decent product, a really loyal team, and you're just starting to turn a profit.
Right.
But suddenly, the biggest conglomerate in the world decides they want your market share. And I mean, they don't just want to acquire you. They want to dismantle your office brick by brick, scatter your employees across the globe, and totally erase your brand.
Wow.
Yeah, that is the level of existential dread we are dealing with today.
Only in our case, the startup is the Kingdom of Judah,
Mm-hmm.
specifically the city of Jerusalem, and that conglomerate. That would be the Neo-Assyrian Empire,
The heavy hitters.
arguably the first true superpower in human history. And we are looking at the year 701 BC.
Right. And just to set the stakes here for you listening, when we say superpower, we aren't talking about a trade dispute. The Assyrians were a military machine.
Undefeated, basically.
Yeah, they had an essentially undefeated status. They were efficient, they were brutal, and they had already rolled over pretty much every other nation in the neighborhood.
Exactly. This is the ultimate mismatch. On paper, Jerusalem should not survive this encounter. And that is what makes today's deep dive so incredibly interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
We are pulling from a really thick stack of sources today, 3 primary texts, actually. We've got the historical narrative in 2 Kings chapters 18 and 19, the parallel account in 2 Chronicles 32, and the prophetic perspective found in Isaiah chapters 26 and 37.
It's rare we get that many angles on one ancient event. I mean, usually we're lucky to find a single clay tablet.
It is rare. And because we have these different angles, we can piece together a really complex picture. Because this isn't just a battle story.
No, it's really not.
It's a case study in leadership under fire. Our mission today is to unpack how leaders handle intimidation, the complexity of decision-making when survival is literally on the line. And this fascinating concept the text points toward, called active trust.
I really want to jump right into the psychological aspect of this because that's where the story feels so modern to me.
Let's do it.
So the Assyrian king, Sennacherib, he is physically destroying the fortified cities of Judah. He's already taken Lachish, which was like the second biggest city in the kingdom.
All right, a massive blow.
Huge blow. But before he brings the siege engines to Jerusalem, he sends a delegation.
He sends a high-ranking official. The text calls him the Rabshakeh. Now, it's important to note Rabshakeh isn't his name. It's his title.
Oh, okay.
That means the chief cupbearer, or essentially the chief of staff.
Yeah.
He is the mouthpiece of the empire.
And he doesn't just ride up and say, surrender or die. He engages in full-blown psychological warfare.
Oh, yeah.
He stands near the aqueduct of the upper pool, which puts him right within earshot of the city walls. And he does something that catches everyone completely off guard.
He speaks in Yehudite, the Hebrew dialect of the common people.
Which is such a calculated move.
It's brilliant. The Jewish officials actually bug him. Please speak to us in Aramaic. We understand it. Don't speak in the language of the people on the wall. Because they know that Aramaic is the language of diplomacy. But Hebrew is the language of the soldiers and the farmers.
That is a crucial detail. He is bypassing the leadership entirely. He wants the guys holding the spears on top of the wall to hear him. He's trying to incite a mutiny or just cause a total collapse of morale.
Exactly. He wants to sow panic directly into the population so the city just implodes from the inside.
Yeah.
And his argument is incredibly sophisticated.
Yeah, it is.
He doesn't just threaten violence. He weaponizes their own religion against them.
This is the part in 2 Kings 18 that really made me pause. The Rabshakeh brings up King Hezekiah's recent reforms. He asks the people, wait, isn't Hezekiah the guy who removed your God's high places and altars?
Right. And to understand why that hit so hard, we have to clarify what high places were.
Please do.
So for generations, the people of Judah worshipped Yahweh at local shrines, usually on hilltops or under big trees. It was convenient, it was traditional, and it was local.
Sure.
But strictly speaking, according to the Torah, they were supposed to centralize worship at the temple in Jerusalem.
Right. So Hezekiah, in his zeal to follow the law, had gone around and smashed all these local altars. He forced everyone to come to the main temple.
Exactly.
And the biblical authors frame this as a great righteous act. He was cleaning up the worship.
Correct. From a theological standpoint, he was doing the right thing. But I mean, imagine you're a farmer in a rural village.
Yeah.
That local altar was where your grandfather worshipped. It's where you prayed for rain. And then the king comes in, tears it down, and says, no, you have to go to the city now.
You might not feel purified by that.
Not at all. You might feel resentful. You might even worry that the king has offended God by tearing down his shrines.
And the Rabshakeh knows this. He is poking right at that open wound.
He really is.
He's essentially shouting at the wall, you think God is going to save Hezekiah? Why? Hezekiah is the guy who destroyed God's altars. If anything, God is on my side because I'm here to punish him.
It is a brilliant, twisted piece of logic. He's taking Hezekiah's greatest act of obedience, the centralization of worship, and framing it as his greatest crime.
Yeah.
He literally claims, Yahweh told me to march against this land and destroy it.
That is masterclass gaslighting. Because it's based on a fact, Hezekiah did tear them down. He's just twisting the motive and the consequence.
Hell yeah.
If I'm a soldier on that wall already terrified of the Assyrians, and now this guy is telling me that my own king has angered God, I'm dropping my shield.
That's the goal. Drive a wedge between the leader and the led. Because if the people believe their leader has led them into spiritual error, they won't fight for him.
So Hezekiah is dealing with this internal morale crisis, but let's not forget, there is still a massive army moving toward him.
A very real physical threat.
Right. And this brings us to a part of the story that I feel often gets skipped over because it's uncomfortable. We can call it the messy middle.
It is very messy. Because if you only read the Sunday school version, the story goes, threat arrives, Hezekiah prays, God saves them.
Nice and tidy.
But the text in 2 Kings 18.14 reveals a very different sequence of events.
The tribute payment.
The tribute payment. Before the final standoff, Hezekiah tries to buy Sennacherib off. He sends a message saying, I have done wrong. Withdraw from me, and I will pay whatever you demand of me.
I have done wrong. I mean, that is an outright admission of guilt. He is capitulating.
Completely.
And the price tag is staggering. 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold.
To put that in perspective, that is a kingdom-bankrupting amount of wealth. And the text gives us a truly heartbreaking detail. To make the payment, Hezekiah has to strip the gold overlay off the doors of the temple of the Lord.
Let's just stop there for a second. He is peeling the gold off the holiest site in the nation, the place he just spent all that energy centralizing worship around,
Right.
all to pay a bribe to a pagan king. How do we reconcile this with a hero of faith image?
Well, it's the subject of a lot of debate among historians and theologians. Some scholars look at this and see a failure of nerve.
Right.
They argue that he panicked, that he trusted his treasury more than his theology in that moment.
But I have to push back a little on that perspective. I mean, isn't that just governing?
It's a fair question.
He is responsible for thousands of lives. If he can write a check to stop a massacre, isn't he morally obligated to try? It feels like real politic.
And that's the other valid perspective we see in the sources. It's pragmatism. In the ancient Near East, paying tribute was the standard way to survive a superpower without getting annihilated.
Right. It's just how the game was played.
He might have thought, I need to buy time, or I need to spare the city a brutal siege. It humanizes him, honestly. He isn't a superhero. He's a politician trying to navigate an impossible situation. And just a reminder, we aren't taking sides on whether he was right or wrong here. We're just laying out the debate found in the analysis of these texts.
Absolutely. But the tragedy, and I think this is the key turning point, is that it didn't work.
Exactly. That is the lesson of the tribute. Sennacherib took the gold, but he didn't leave.
He kept the army in place.
Yes. The pragmatism failed. The appeasement failed.
That has to be the lowest point for Hezekiah. You've emptied the treasury, you've desecrated the temple doors, and the enemy is still sharpening their swords outside your window.
You have literally played your last card.
And that failure is what forces the shift, right?
Yes. When the political and financial solutions collapse, Hezekiah is backed into a corner where he has no other options. This is where we see the transition to what the source material describes as active trust.
I really like that term, active trust. Because usually when we talk about trusting God in these types of stories, it sounds very passive, like just sit back and wait.
Right.
But Hezekiah gets very busy.
Extremely busy. If we look at 2 Chronicles 32 and 2 Kings 19 together, we see a dual strategy. On one hand, he gets to work on physical preparations. He repairs the broken sections of the wall. He builds towers. And most famously, he secures the water supply.
This is Hezekiah's tunnel, right?
Yes. He realizes that if the Assyrians besiege the city, they will cut off the water. So he has his engineers dig a 1,700-foot tunnel through solid bedrock to divert the Gihon spring from outside the walls to a pool inside the city.
Wow.
And then he covers up the source outside so the Assyrians won't find it.
That is a massive engineering feat.
Right.
It implies months of hard labor. So he is not just praying, he is prepping.
But, and this is the active trust part, at the exact same time, look at his spiritual posture. In 2 Kings 19, when the threats ramp up, he tears his clothes, puts on sackcloth, and goes into the temple.
Which again is the universal ancient sign of, I am at the end of my rope.
It's total humility. He sends a message to the prophet Isaiah saying, "This is a day of distress and rebuke. Children have come to the point of birth, and there is no strength to deliver them."
That's a graphic metaphor.
It is. It's a metaphor for total exhaustion and inability to complete the task.
So you have this fascinating dichotomy. In the war room, he's shouting orders about the water supply. But in the sanctuary, he's in sackcloth admitting he's powerless.
And then he goes out to the people. 2 Chronicles 32 records his speech. He tells them, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of the king of Assyria and the vast army with him."
And he drops that incredible line, "For there is a greater power with us than with him. With him is only the arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles."
That is the reframing. The Rabshakeh tried to frame the conflict as Hezekiah versus the people, or Assyria versus a weak king.
Yeah.
Hezekiah reframes it as the arm of flesh versus the living God.
And the text says the people rested on his words. That is such a powerful description of leadership. He didn't promise them safety. He gave them perspective.
And notice he didn't say, "Be brave, because I built a really good tunnel."
Right.
He didn't put the confidence in the prep work. He put the confidence in the divine while still doing the prep work. That is active trust.
It's that balance.
Exactly. It's the balance of doing what is in your power to do.
Yeah.
Not being negligent, but ultimately realizing that the outcome is not in your hands.
I think that is the hardest balance for any leader or really any person listening to this to strike. We tend to swing between it's all on me, I have to fix it, and I'll just ignore it and hope it works out.
Yes, we go to the extremes.
But Hezekiah integrates them. He digs the tunnel and wears the sackcloth.
Precisely.
Because we've covered the psychological warfare and the pivot to active trust, but we really have to address the climax. Because for the Assyrians, this wasn't just a land grab, it was a theological contest.
That is the core worldview clash here. The Assyrians were theological imperialists.
Okay, unpack that.
Their ideology was that their national god, Ashur, was supreme. Every time they conquered a nation, it was proof that Ashur was stronger than that nation's god. They literally kept a scorecard.
Right, the Rabshakeh lists the stats on the wall. He asks, where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim?
Yes.
He's basically citing the league standings. Like, I crushed these 10 other nations, their gods didn't stop me, Yahweh is just number 11.
It's a category error on their part. To the Assyrians, all gods were the same. Local territorial spirits attached to a specific hill or city. If you have a bigger army, you beat the local god. They assumed Yahweh was just another one of those.
They didn't understand that the biblical claim is that Yahweh isn't a local mascot. He is the creator.
Right. And this brings us to the resolution. The text describes a supernatural intervention. 2 Kings says the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 men in the Assyrian camp in one night.
Wow.
And Sennacherib breaks camp and goes home.
Now, obviously, that is a miraculous claim. But what's fascinating is when we look at the historical records from the Assyrian side, specifically the Taylor Prism, which is Sennacherib's own account of this campaign.
The Taylor Prism is amazing because it confirms almost all the details but spins the ending. Sennacherib boasts about capturing 46 fortified cities of Judah. He talks about the tribute Hezekiah paid.
He really lists it all out.
He does. And then he says, "I shut Hezekiah up like a bird in a cage in Jerusalem, his royal city."
Like a bird in a cage. That is a very vivid image. But what's missing from that boast?
He never claims he took the bird.
Exactly.
He never says, "I captured Jerusalem." He never says, "I removed Hezekiah from the throne." For an Assyrian king who usually brags about skinning his enemies and piling up their heads, that silence is deafening.
It really is.
If he had taken the city, he would have carved it on every wall in Nineveh.
So the historical silence actually backs up the biblical claim that something stopped him. He took the money, he took the other cities, but he couldn't take Jerusalem.
And for the biblical authors, that non-capture is the theological proof. It answered the Rabshakeh's question. He asked, who among all the gods has delivered their land?
And the answer became this one.
Yes. It perfectly distinguishes Yahweh from the gods of the nations.
And here is the tough pill to swallow, I think. The crisis was necessary to establish that proof. Well, if Hezekiah had just paid the tribute and Sennacherib had walked away quietly, nobody would have learned anything about the nature of God. The threat had to go to the absolute brink, where the money was gone and the armies were outside for the deliverance to be unmistakable.
I think that's a very fair reading of the text. That puts a different spin on the messy middle we talked about earlier.
Okay.
Maybe the failure of the tribute was actually part of the design. It stripped away the human solution so the divine solution could be seen.
So let's bring this in for a landing. We've gone from the aqueduct where the Rabshakeh is shouting lies, to the temple door stripped of gold, to the tunnel, and finally to the deliverance.
What a journey.
If you had to distill this into one actionable thought for you listening, someone who isn't a king, isn't under a literal siege, but is facing their own high-stakes problem, what is it?
For me, it's redefining what it means to be a faithful leader. We often think faith means never wavering, never being afraid, never trying a pragmatic solution. But Hezekiah shows us that faith is resilient. He tried the tribute. It failed.
Yep.
He could have given up there. But he didn't. He pivoted.
He didn't let the failure of his plan A become a failure of his faith.
Right. Active trust is what you do after the easy way out fails. You dig the tunnel,
Yep.
you lock the gates, and then you surrender the outcome to the only one who can actually control it. It's that dual motion of maximum effort and maximum dependence.
That is really good. And I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocation to mull over. It goes back to the very beginning, to the Rabshakeh speech.
The psychological warfare.
Exactly. Remember how he argued? He didn't attack Hezekiah for his sins. He attacked him for his virtues.
Right.
He took Hezekiah's reforms, the removal of the high places, which was an act of obedience, and twisted it into a reason to be afraid. He said, you tore down the altar, so God is mad. Think about that in your own life. Sometimes the discouragement you face doesn't come because you messed up. It comes because you are actually making progress. You decide to get healthy, and suddenly you get injured. You decide to fix your finances, and the car breaks down. And that inner voice, your own personal Rabshakeh, says, see? You shouldn't have tried. You're making things worse.
Weaponizing the good.
Exactly. The enemy used Hezekiah's best deeds to try and break his confidence. Don't let the difficulty of the struggle convince you that you're on the wrong path. Sometimes the pushback is just proof that you're actually threatening the status quo.
That is a profound place to land.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.